So, again, I'm Ashley. Thank you so much for joining our seminar on the Sage Hill High School experience and the college application experience. Along with Jackie and Julia, I will be your co-host for the afternoon. And so there are 4 other panelists who will also be sharing their experiences. First, we'll introduce ourselves. Again, I'm Ashley. I will be attending Princeton in the fall to study civil and environmental engineering.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jackie, and I will be studying history and computer science at Claremont McKenna College.
Hi, I'm Julia. I'm planning on studying biochemistry at the University of Pennsylvania.
Hi, my name is Tim, and I'm planning on studying EECS at UC Berkeley in the fall.
Hi, my name is Austin, and I will be going to Columbia University to study econ.
Hello, my name is Hannah, and I'm planning on studying biomedical engineering at Dartmouth.
Hello, I'm Annie, and I'm going to study psychology at UCSD.
So let me just share our PowerPoint real quick. One moment. So our goal for today is to share with Sage Hill students our experiences in high school and our experiences applying to college so that students can enjoy their time in high school while preparing for the application process. This is our agenda for today. This is just a rough timeline. We're not following these times exactly. But first, we'll spend the first 1/3 going over the college application process. And this component of the webinar is geared more towards rising seniors, but it may also be helpful for underclassmen to get a general sense of what the application requires. And then each of the 7 seniors, including myself, will share their experiences in high school. And then we'll spend the last third of the webinar answering some questions that were previously submitted on WeChat. And then after the webinar from 4 to 4:30, we will be staying over time to answer any questions that you guys have. And you guys can put those questions down in the chat box. So first, what does the college application process look like?
Okay. So yes, there are basically 3 types of applications. Let's address the first 2. There's the Common App and the Coalition App. So these are the most popular application sites and are used by most colleges. Within these applications, you should find locations where you enter in activities, grades, and the personal statement essay, which is your main essay that is sent to all schools. Each school also has 0 to 11 school-specific writing questions. Some of them are optional, and they are called supplements. So how do you choose between the Common App and the Coalition App? Sage Hill prefers you to use the Common App because it's already integrated with the college counseling system and supports a lot more schools. However, you may want to choose the Coalition App because it is more tailored towards underrepresented students with sections that allow you to write about family responsibilities rather than academics. You may also want to use the Coalition App because the Common App only allows you to write to 20 schools. So say you want to apply to 24 schools, you would need to use the Coalition App alongside the Common App. Lastly, some schools aren't supported by the Common App or the Coalition App. Instead, these schools have their own application systems. If you're planning to apply to a school with an independent application site, make sure you communicate well with your college counselor to make sure all your files are uploaded correctly. In the next 30 minutes, we'll focus on components of the Common App, but the components should be similar for all different types of applications.
So there's a couple different rounds for the general college application timeline. So the first round is the early round. It's generally recommended that every student applies somewhere early. And it's a really great way to show that you have a strong interest in a school. And it's just like a way to help you start earlier and get the ball rolling. You also will get back your results earlier in early December, and you usually submit in early November. And so the way people usually pick an EA or ED school, they'll start their college search really early, and they usually visit the schools that they're interested in applying to. So there's a difference between early action and early decision. So early action is generally a non-binding contract where if you get into your early action school, you're not required to go to that school. Whereas if you apply to an early decision school and you get in, you have to go to that school, which is generally like it helps students like relieve their stress because they know where they're going really early. So and also the acceptance rate for early schools during the early round is usually higher than regular decision just because of the sheer number of applicants that are applying early. However, generally also the caliber of applicants also tends to differ between the early decision and the regular decision just because the students that are applying early are generally more ready to submit their applications. So the next round is the regular round, and the deadline for most schools is January 1st or a couple days later than January 1st. And then the next round is the UCs. And the UCs is kind of like a whole different timeline where their deadline is November 30th. And it's basically just one application that gets sent to as many schools, UC schools that you check off. So now after this, we'll go over different components of the application and we'll go into each component into more detail just so that you can get a better sense of what the application is and what it isn't. So colleges will see every single class that you have to input every single class, your grades for every class, and the level of difficulty, meaning whether it's like a regular class, a college prep, an accelerated class, an AP class. Generally, most students at Sage will take multiple APs starting from sophomore year. Also, college admissions officers tend to say that they look to see that students are challenging themselves academically and are succeeding at that, which can mean that they look for honors and AP classes on a student's transcript. But as students, none of us are really able to say for sure what the colleges want. So we'd really recommend that you talk to a Sage College counselor that they provide if you have any questions about course selection.
So the next component of the application are the test scores. So there are 3 different types of tests. 2 of them are mandatory and 1 is optional. So the AP testing is optional. You do not have to submit AP scores to college. And I know with our current situation, some schools are making SAT testing optional as well, but a lot of schools are still requiring this. So with SAT and ACT, colleges usually require 1 of the 2. They accept both, so you get to choose which one you submit. The main difference between the 2 is that the ACT has a science reasoning section, while the SAT only has reading, writing, and math. If you are not sure which test you want to take, I'd recommend taking a couple practice tests of both and comparing the scores and just choosing to take the test where you get the higher score. So the last test date for SAT, ACT that can be submitted to colleges is December of senior year, although most people choose to get their testing done earlier, and a lot of people do it during the summer. The next type of tests are the SAT subject tests. As the name suggests, these tests are specific to a subject. They're multiple choice and 1 hour long, and generally students take 2 to 3 different subject tests. Some schools will require 1 STEM and 1 humanities test, and other schools like MIT will require a math and a science test score. And then finally, AP testing. Sage requires all students who take an AP class to take the AP test. So although these are optional, Sage already requires students to take them anyways. So here is just a timeline of, I pulled this from the College Board website, of the testing throughout the year available for SAT and SAT subject tests. And this December 5th that I circled here is the final test date that you can take an SAT test and still submit it to colleges. And this is for rising juniors. But most students will take the test multiple times. So if you are planning to take an SAT test, I'd recommend not choosing December 5th as your first time taking the test. Definitely do it earlier in either August or September to give yourself some room if you do want to retake the test. Also, I circled May 8th and June 5th here, and personally, I found these 2 days to be the best days to take SAT subject tests because they're at the end of the school year, and AP tests are in May. So if you study for AP chemistry, for example, and then you take the AP chem test, you can easily take the chemistry SAT subject test immediately after without having to relearn all the curriculum.
All right, activity time. Let's go over the activities. So if you see on the screen, there should be a couple of things you can enter for one activity. First, activity type, position, leadership description, organization name, details, honors one, accomplishments, participation, grade levels, timing and participation, hours spent per week, weeks spent per year. So on the Common App, you are allowed to list at most 10 activities. So as you can see, you need to write about hours per week. So it's important to find activities that you want to spend time doing and commit to. And because there's only 10 spots, make sure each activity adds to your application. And now let's talk about volunteering on the activities. Julia, do you want to talk about organizations?
Yeah, so personally, volunteering and community service was a big part of my application. There's a lot of different ways for you to get involved in different volunteering organizations. There's also many different types of volunteering. So you can really decide like what you're interested in volunteering in. There's like ways for you to get involved with like volunteering in like science and STEM, with like if you want to like volunteer at a hospital, if you want to volunteer like on a farm, like there's many different opportunities for you to get involved. And a really good way to do that is just to do some research online, do a couple quick Google searches. That's how I personally got more involved in community service, and really just like have fun with it and really just follow your interests.
Oh, yes. Okay. So Sage also provides service learning. And what service learning is, some of you may know, some of you might not know. It's a full day in a month to do service at Sage Hill. It's integrated within the curriculum. So freshman and sophomore year, you kind of just have to do what Sage says. It's freshman year, it's a rotation system now. And then sophomore year, you partner up with a student from a school in Santa Ana. And in junior and senior year, though, you can start your own service learning or join a faculty-led one that already exists. So you can really not only volunteer, but you volunteer in things that you want to do. Examples being there's Sage Hack, which is a 24-hour coding competition for high schoolers. There's GEM, which is Girls Empowerment Movement, and TEDx, which became TED Talks now because the team messed up the application. But basically what it is your regular old TED Talks from alumni, current students, faculty, and other guest speakers. And for volunteering, also for service learning, make sure you don't slack off because many students do the bare minimum necessary during service learning. And during that day, you want to make sure you give it your all. And now let's talk about startups and independent projects. With these things, you kind of have to do these things yourself. Some Sage clubs somewhat help, but it's ultimately on you to do the work and the research. And I will say, if you are making a startup, make sure you actually get some traction, which are users and investment. Because everyone can make a startup, but not everyone can actually go through and follow up with that. So now we're going to talk about clubs. Ashley, can you discuss this?
Yeah, so Sage does offer quite a few clubs, but at Sage it's also really easy to start your own club. It's much easier than you expect. You really just have to fill out a form and submit it to Campo. And it's a great opportunity to get leadership positions. And clubs are also a place for you to find things you're interested in. So I'd recommend joining a lot of clubs freshman year. And by the end of the year, just maybe pick 3 or 4 that you want to commit to and spend more time in during the rest of your high school. But yeah, don't be afraid to try new things by joining clubs.
Okay, yes. Now we will discuss internships. So at Sage, they offer something called the Sage Hill Internship Program, known as SHIP. Many students who are in Sage may know about it. Basically, what SHIP does, it connects you with a lot of parents and volunteers that help you revise your resume and how to conduct mock interviews for internships. I didn't really use the SHIP program. What I did instead was I kind of just did my own internship opportunities and looked for them myself. And where can you find these outside internships outside of the SHIP program? For one, you can go to competitions and conventions. For me, I went to hackathons, and there I was able to talk to a lot of the representatives from different companies. You pretty much just talk to them, and if they have any openings, they will offer you stuff or just give you their card so you can reach out to them. Make sure you prepare your resume because your resume is the thing they see and try to determine whether or not you're fit or you're able to work there. And if you really don't know where to start, the best thing to do is probably go to the website of a company that you want to work on. And if you scroll down, usually there's a section that says opportunities or find a job, and you just click that link and you just send in your resume and just whatever they need you to fill out. And you can also just email companies or just connect to them via LinkedIn. And yeah, now let's talk about research. Julia?
Great. So for research, there's a lot of different ways to get involved in research. One way is just to email your local professors. I would recommend really doing your research and learning about what the professors are studying, what they're involved in, and really show your interest and explain to them why you want to be there, why what your interests in align with what they're studying. Another way is to apply to different research programs. There's so many different research programs that are available online. You'll have to apply. Usually you have to write about why you want to join the program, and they usually will help you find a professor or find opportunities for you to do your own independent research. Also, if you have connections in the world of research, this is a really great time to use them, and just really just branch out and just put yourself out there.
Another activity that a lot of students like to do is join summer programs. So I think summer programs are a great opportunity to explore different interests and try new activities. And most applications for summer programs are due in the winter or the early spring. So I recommend planning your summer ahead of time. There was one summer, I think in April, I started looking at summer programs, and by then most of them had locked the application sites. And so yeah, definitely plan ahead for summer programs, and also apply to multiple summer programs because you may not be accepted into one if you only apply to one. Also, on the activities component of the application, you can also list any jobs or sports or art that you participate in.
Oh yes, time for honors. So with honors, it's also a section on the Common App. You're able to list 5 honors and awards. If you read the description here, it's usually academic honors. Now you could put non-academic honors, but then I don't know about that one. So the honors could be test related. So this could be National Merit Scholar, which comes from the PSAT and doing really well there. Also AP Scholar, and that depends on how well you do on APs, whether you get a 4 or 5 or something above that, or I mean something above the 3, and how many APs you take. There's also an award for perfect AP score. Now that is extremely, extremely rare, but if you do get it, you instantly become pretty famous. There are also other types of competitions. You have math and science Olympiads. You may know AMC, stuff like that. There's a lot of art competitions, music, visual arts, etc. There's also a lot of writing competitions. And if you don't know any writing competitions, that's fine, because Mr. Parker, a teacher at Sage Hill, sends one out to everyone all the time, probably twice a day. So there's literally no way you can't find a writing competition. There's mock trial, debate, MUN. There's also hackathons, and there's also admission to selective groups. Now this could be selective orchestras like Allstate, could be selective summer programs like MIT Launch X, and honors can also be any other type of recognition, whether that be an interview on a TV station or a volunteer award.
So the next component is the essay component of the of the application. So the personal statement here is a part of the Common App. It is a 650-word essay, and in addition to the 650-word personal statement, every school has specific essays. So I will just read 2 prompts here so you guys can get an idea of what the personal statement asks for. So the first one is, some students have a background, identity, interest, or talent that is so meaningful they believe an application would be incomplete without it. If this sounds like you, then please share your story. Or another prompt is, the lessons we take from obstacles we encounter can be fundamental to later success. Recount a time when you faced a challenge, setback, or failure. How did it affect you, and what did you learn from the experience? So all these prompts give you opportunities to talk about what you think is important to you and to give the admissions officers more insight into your personality and your interests. Essays help connect the dots between your classes, extracurricular activities, and your awards, and they help put a face behind the application. If you think about all the activities out there, many students do similar activities. They have the same test scores, they have the same awards. So oftentimes a good essay is what makes a student really stand out, and they help create a narrative about the student and explain why you do what you do. So 650 words is approximately 2 pages double spaced, and you should definitely use up all of this space. For some people, they choose to spend these 650 words expanding on one activity that they find really meaningful, while other people may choose to write about personal experiences that are completely not academic. There is no one correct way to approach the essay, and so each of the panelists here will be sharing how they chose to portray themselves when they applied to college. So, as I mentioned earlier, each school has specific essays that they require. They aren't necessarily full essays, they're actually just writing questions, and they range from 50 words to 650 words. And some schools have 0 additional writing questions, while other schools have 11 additional writing questions. And although 11 sounds like a lot of writing, usually the schools that have more writing questions tend to have shorter length requirements. So I'll just be going over a few common types of school-specific essays. So the first one is why major. Basically, schools want to understand what you are planning on studying there and why. So for example, if you are applying to Columbia College, tell us what from your current and past experiences, either academic or personal, attracts you specifically to the field or fields of study that you noted in the members question section. If you are currently undecided, please write about any field or fields in which you may have an interest at this time. Another common question is why school? So this is mostly an opportunity for students to show the schools why they are interested in the school and why they are a good fit for the school. So please tell us what you value most about Columbia and why. Another common question is a community essay. Basically, schools want to understand how the student will contribute to their community. At Penn, learning and growth happen outside of the classrooms too. How will you explore the community at Penn? Consider how this community will shape your perspective, identity, and how your perspective and identity will help shape the community. Some questions just ask you to expand on activities, such as an extracurricular activity. So this prompt from Princeton says, please briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities or work experiences that was particularly meaningful to you. And sometimes schools will ask about activities you did during the summer. So this prompt says, please tell us how you've spent the last 2 summers or vacations between school years, including any jobs you have held. So as you can see, these 2 prompts are more straightforward. Sometimes schools will have a bunch of miscellaneous prompts that give a lot more room for creativity. Stanford, for example, has this roommate prompt that says, virtually all of Stanford's undergraduates live on campus. Write a note to your future roommate that reveals something about you or that will help your roommate and us get to know you better. So as you can see from this prompt, the admissions officers just really want to get to know you better through your essays. And that's mainly the goal of the writing component, to put a face to all your accomplishments and your activities.
Great. So the UC application is a little bit different. The format is they have 4 different essays that you have to write, which are 350 words each, and you get to choose from 8 different prompts. And we've put some prompts up on the slide. But what we felt that the UC essays really focused on was sharing different aspects of yourself that are really different, and really showing different, like, your experiences and talking about it in a really narrative format. So for example, the first prompt here is describe an example of your leadership experience in which you have positively influenced others, helped resolve disputes, or contributed to group efforts over time. So you can see that this prompt is really heavily like story-based or narrative-based, where you kind of they're really just trying to get to know you and your leadership and like how you've personally done that in your life. And so they're really just looking for like a story and for you to really just focus on different aspects of yourself.
Oh yes, I am back. Okay, so recommendation letters. There will be 3 recommendation letters that are required. These are 2 from your teachers, usually from one STEM, one humanities teacher, and usually these could be sophomore or junior year teachers. You usually want to choose a junior year teacher because they know you more recently. And you also want to make, you also have a recommendation from your college counselor. Now, Sage, he'll assigns a student a college counselor in junior year. And you want to make sure that you update your college counselor with everything you're doing, your activities, and just talk to them a lot because they also have recommendation letters that they write about you. And there could be also other recommendation letters, whether it's like an employer or somebody you've worked with. In some schools like Dartmouth, I know that even have a peer evaluation recommendation. So make sure you have friends so they can write you a letter. But if you don't have friends, that is a different story. And you want to make sure that you choose a teacher that knows you fairly well. So make sure you talk to your teachers. One thing that you should probably do is Sage Hill offers these conferences, also known as office hours for people. And most of the time when you go to a teacher's room, it's kind of empty, there's no one there. So make sure you take that opportunity to go in, talk to your teachers so you could develop a greater relationship with your teachers. And also, you could also, give thanks to your teachers via a gift. It's not necessary, but it would possibly help. And make sure that you also choose a teacher that you've worked with outside the classroom. It's an added bonus. It could be a club advisor or a service learning teacher. Service learning leader. So make sure you just have teachers that just know you really well.
Great. So for interviews, the interview process will usually occur after you've submitted all your applications. So colleges will reach out and ask for interviewers. How it works is usually it's a network of alumni interviewers who have volunteered to interview college applicants. Usually it does not really matter, getting an interview usually doesn't mean that you've passed some sort of stage because it usually depends on how many alumni interviewers are available in your region. So my personal understanding of how interviews work comes from my dad who interviews for Harvard and my mom who interviews from Columbia. So what they've told me is that they're really looking for motivated students who are really inquisitive, really curious, really introspective and reflective. And this is a great opportunity for you to communicate to colleges what makes you tick, how will you contribute to the college environment better. So one thing to know about interviews also is that they usually don't make your application and they can only break it. I tend to view it as a good thing because it doesn't mean that you can do such a great job that you get into the college. It just means that as long as you don't really mess up in any way, you'll be fine. And just be natural, be yourself, really try to stay authentic. Don't really have really canned answers because interviewers can usually tell if your answers are really, really rehearsed and seem really unnatural. Also, it's pretty important not to embellish your answers because interviewers will, if they see that you have a great interest in something, they'll ask you more follow-up questions about it. And it's very easy for them to tell if you've over-exaggerated an accomplishment or an activity. So next we'll go over some optional components to the application. So one of them is the resume. The resume is a really great chance to elaborate more on your activity section. Since there's only 10 spaces on your activity section and there's a limited number of characters you can use to describe the activities, resumes are a really great way to just kind of elaborate more and talk more about details and more things to kind of give them more clarity on. And this is also a really great opportunity to take advantage of the SHIP program at Sage. So even if you don't necessarily want to take advantage of the internships that SHIP provides, they will at least help you begin to build a resume, and they'll also help you kind of look over it, see how to approach it, what exactly to put on it, and they'll really help you guide you through the process.
So another optional component are portfolios. There are 2 main types of portfolios: art portfolios and science or technology related portfolios. So colleges, not all colleges accept portfolios, but the ones that do usually accept a variety of art portfolios, including visual arts, music, dance, theater, creative writing, and architecture. And each school requires a different number of works. For example, some schools require 20 works of visual art, while other schools only require 5. So if this is something you're interested in and you would like to know how many works you need to prepare, perhaps you can go on the college website and look into that more. Also, the art portfolios are viewed by an art committee that's very knowledgeable about the subject, not the admissions committee. Jackie, would you like to talk about science and technology portfolios?
Oh, yes, this is very fun. Okay, so basically, with the science and tech portfolios, you could have research papers or you could have maker portfolios. So, research papers is if you did like a paper on biology, chemistry, or some other study. A lot of schools offer the opportunity for you to just upload your papers. Some schools also enable maker portfolios. Now, schools with guaranteed or that I know of have this for sure is Columbia and MIT. So what a maker portfolio is basically say you're someone who enjoys making robots or drones, or even make a lot of like different apps or softwares. This is kind of the place where you can upload and describe what they are. So you can upload images, videos, and then I think they offer you a max of 500-word description. So yeah, that's pretty much the research paper and maker portfolios. Now, as Ashley said, just like the arts portfolio, these are reviewed by a separate committee. So your missions officers don't actually see these directly, but what they do get is the comments that the portfolio or the committee that reviews them gives them. So it kind of just adds to your application.
I also wanted to add about art portfolios. Usually there is a writing component that asks the student to describe what their work means to them and what they're trying to accomplish through their work. So some students will choose to have a theme throughout all of their works of art, while other students prefer to present a variety of techniques and skills. So the last optional component is a website. So there's a place where you can link a website, and some people like to make a personal website that is, in a sense, like a resume that displays their accomplishments and their projects, while some people like to make websites to show like a specific project or a specific passion. I made a website that had a bunch of art and craft tutorials that I made with kids and pictures of me working with the kids. And I know Jackie made a website that displayed all of his coding projects. So now each of the seniors will present their experiences. So first is Timothy, who will be attending UC Berkeley to study electrical engineering and computer science, as well as cognitive science.
All right, so I guess first we can kind of go over some activities. So first, sorry, let me start video. Okay, so I guess the first category of activities was kind of coding and entrepreneurship related. I did attend lots of hackathons, and for one of the hackathons, we were invited to pitch our product in Silicon Valley in front of a bunch of investors. So that was very nice. And I also did a USA Computing Olympiad. And the next category of activities were social justice related things, such as like SAME and Sage Prosthetics, which is a service learning organization at Sage, which basically 3D prints prosthetic hands for children who are born without these hands. I was also nationally ranked in Lincoln Douglas debate. And then I had some activities that didn't really fall into any category, but I still thought that were really important for my personal development. For example, things like math club and being an Eagle Scout and leading academic decathlon for all 4 years. I think in my activities, I learned that it's important to be well-rounded because yes, you can have these like themes and application stories, but it's also important to show colleges that you're an interesting person and that you can do lots of different things besides your story, right? Like you're not only your story. And I think the second lesson I learned about activities is that it's important to do the activities that you want to do. Because if you want to do an activity, then that makes you more motivated to put in the work to actually become good at it, right? But the caveat is that when you're finding activities that you want to do, it's important to be proactive about trying new things, like explore different activities. And also, it's important to recognize that for a lot of activities, like no activity is going to be perfect, right? For even like the best activity, there are going to be times where you're going to have to work hard, where you're going to be upset and sad, but it's important to weigh the different activities, right? For example, I ended up doing tennis all 4 years because even though I didn't really like tennis, I liked Sage Fit even less, and I decided that I would, rather do tennis than Sage Fit, and I think that would be an example of doing the activities that you want to do, but still being proactive about it. And I think overall, my application process was basically using emergent technologies to promote social justice. I felt that throughout my experience with hackathons, I had a lot of experience with entrepreneurship, and throughout my debate experience, I was able to identify problems in society such as mass incarceration, and then build a solution that could solve these problems, such as an app, Fair and Legal, that connects underprivileged defendants to underemployed lawyers, which ended up winning the Congressional App Challenge. Okay, more generally, so on the application process, I think authenticity is really important because admissions officers are very skilled at seeing through fake activities because because a lot of people think college is a very high stakes game, and they're willing to game the system in many different ways, and the admissions officers are too skilled at seeing through this. So it's important to be authentic, and yes, you can embellish a little bit, but don't go overboard, because if an admissions officer finds out that you like went overboard with one of your activities, then that is a mark against you. I think another thing that kind of like helped my application was interviews. I think during interviews, it's important to be authentic and be yourself, and that's what kind of like I try to do, because you are the best version of yourself. If you try to be someone else, then you're simply going to be a bad version of that someone else, and that's going to come across to the interviewer. For example, during my interview to become a Regents scholar, the professor remarked at the end that I would make lots of contributions to the UC Berkeley environment, and I think that was a big part of why I actually got my Regents scholarship. Okay. Next, on what I wish I could have done differently during high school, I think time management is kind of an interesting one. Not so much like time management between like school and extracurriculars, but kind of like time management between extracurriculars. Like for example, I spent a lot of time on the USA Computing Olympiad. When I was already platinum, trying to get up into the higher division. And looking back, I think that time could have been better spent doing other things such as debate. I think another thing that is important is choosing your major. So this is something that I learned after the application process, and is that certain majors, different majors have wildly different acceptance rate. For example, I was talking to my college counselor, and she said that although the USC admissions rate for general applicants is 13%, for computer science applicants, it is 1%, and that is a huge difference. So I think looking back on my common application, I probably should have chosen a major such as like philosophy, or maybe like or maybe like anthropology, instead of something like computer science. And finally, what did I enjoy the most about high school, and what would I do differently if I restarted high school just in general? I think it's important to recognize that the purpose of high school is not to get into college. Like, I know everyone hypes it up this way, but the purpose of high school is for personal development and to advance yourself and be a better person. And college is only a byproduct of that. And I think going into high school with that mindset will set you up to have a more successful and even a happier high school activity in general. Also, I think social development is really important, because friends are going to be the people who are going to like help you through high school whenever you're feeling down or something. And also the studies have shown that like the more friends and casual acquaintances you have like in high school and college, the more it's going to help you later on in life. And I think finally, I touched on this earlier, but it's important to be different and be open to different activities and clubs, especially during your freshman and sophomore year. Those years are a time for you to explore different clubs. Like join as many as you can. Join as many clubs as you can. You can show up to like 1 or 2 meetings. If you don't like the club, you can quit the club. But the purpose of just joining a bunch of clubs and trying them is so that you can recognize what you like to do and what you want to spend more time in junior and senior year. So like, for example, I joined Model United Nations, in my freshman year, but I went to one conference and I really hated it. So I think that was a signal for me that I should spend more time onto debate. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Timothy.
Okay.
We have Jackie, who will be going to Claremont McKenna College to study history and computer science.
Hello, 267 participants. So I will be presenting on myself. How did you portray yourself in the application, and what was your story? Now, I didn't really know this was the thing, so I kind of just wrote what I wanted to write, but looking at the entire application, what you could summarize it as a playful yet determined student who is excited about the possibilities of computer science. It wasn't very specific. It was kind of just a broad idea. And for my Common App, I kind of just wrote that I was Batman, which I think was interesting, but also I don't know about that one. For 3 to 5 key activities in high schools last summer, one of them is hackathons. I went to a lot of hackathons with him, and we won a lot of them at the local, regional, and national level. From one of those hackathons, we made a startup called Dime, in which, as Tim mentioned earlier, we pitched in Silicon Valley in front of a lot of investors. I'm also on student council, ASB, as the junior and senior co-chair, or in some schools, I think they call it class president. And also I am the president and founder of Meme Club, which some of you might know, some of you might not know, but it's a very fun club. And also over the summer, I was the Camp Sage teacher. And actually, teaching at Camp Sage isn't that hard. If you're a Sage Hill student, just reach out to Miss Swanson and just tell her like, hey, I have this class I want to teach. And then they pay really well. I got paid like $100 per hour. It was like really, really good for 3 weeks. So I think you guys should take advantage of that. All right, so now on to the second part. What do you think you did well on your application? I think when the admissions officers looked at my application, it could have been one of 2 responses, either like, oh, this is really good, or like, what am I reading? This is so strange. It was definitely a refreshing view of things, and it showcased personality. And also I created some engaging stories, but I think some of the stories didn't really have a purpose. Like it wasn't like, oh, I want to do this to help public health. It was just kind of like an interesting story. They were like, okay, but I don't really know what to do with this. So that is something. And what are some things you can improve upon, or what do you wish you could have done differently during high school to better prepare for the application? I definitely should have EA'd or ED'd. If you look at the numbers statistically, EA and ED have a lot higher chances, especially with ED. And also, instead of applying to 31 schools, I should have applied to a lot less. And I should have started writing a lot earlier, because I wrote 31 school applications, I think December 7th. So in a whole week, I wrote 31 school applications. And you have to try to come up with a generalized story before applying. So as I mentioned earlier, I didn't really know how I wanted to portray myself, but that is something you want to focus on. And also, as Tim mentioned a little bit, is you want to make sure you think about majors more carefully. Some majors like comp sci, they call it impacted, but what they really mean by impacted means instead of 13% acceptance, it's 1% acceptance. So you got to be careful which majors and how popular they are, and if you really want to do them, and just really consider what you want to do. And also for interviews, you need to make sure you know how to handshake. I went to like 10 interviews and I shook with my left hand, and that caused a lot of awkward interactions. So make sure you know how to do that. And so what did I enjoy most about high school? And if I could restart high school, what would I do differently? I think the friendships are the biggest things you enjoy high school. You know, you meet a lot of new people. You buy boba with them. They owe you a lot of bobas. You owe them a lot of bobas. It's very interesting. Also running the Flick at Sage Hills is this mini store that is very overpriced, but I mean, sometimes they make good food, but most of the time it's not really good. But still, it's like a hangout area for everyone to go. I also enjoy pranking people a lot, whether that's during prom, whether that's making a robot that calls them and texts them like repeatedly hundreds of times. And also pep rallies. So pep rallies, if you go to Sage Hill or other schools, it's this community events where the entire grade competes. I mean, the entire school competes, and each grade has its own skit. So, you know, you're just trying to decide who's the winner, seniors, juniors, sophomores. And differently, I think I should have thought twice before playing the viola. In freshman year, I came to Sage and there was no violas, and I was the only viola. So in an orchestra of like 20 something people, I was the only person, and like I was the entire section, and that was very scary. And especially freshman year, and it didn't just stop freshman year. Sophomore year, there was only 2. Junior year, there was only 2. So by senior year, I was like, okay, I'm out. So also make sure you do school sports, because even if you don't like school, sports, what I've realized is that it's not just about turning ATPs to ADPs. It's about making connections with people. You get a lot of friends through school sports. And make sure you go to, I should have went to conferences more often, because I think conferences is a great way for you to connect with your teachers. And when you're not at conferences, you're usually doing stuff that is not that productive. So make sure you just go to conferences more often. And, you know, I think a lot of people on this panel are going to say that they wish they spent less time on academics and more time on friendships. But actually, I think the problem is opposite for me. I think I spent too much time on friends. So like before the APs, I remember wanting to go watch Infinity War that just came out, and my mom's like, "No, don't go. You have APs next week. Actually, you have 5 of them." But I'm like, "No, I'm going." So I went, and then I think because of that, I think I lacked a few hours of studying for AP Chem, and because of that, I didn't really know how many questions was on the exam. So there's 50 questions on the multiple choice, and I thought there was only 40, so I answered 40, and I just sat there for an hour. And then when 5 minutes left, they're like, "Oh, you guys are done with 50 questions." I'm like, "Wait, hold on, what?" And there was only 10 questions left. I mean, there was still 10 questions left that I didn't answer. So I think sometimes you have to create priorities and make sure, things are correct. But yeah, that is something I would have done differently.
Thank you, Jackie, for sharing. Next, we have Austin, who will be attending Columbia in the fall to study economics.
Hi, everybody. So just first off with activities, I applied as an econ major, so my most important activities were in this area, and just a little bit about how I got interested in this subject in the first place. As a kid, I was always interested in history and psychology and a lot of the humanities, but I also had like an aptitude in STEM areas. So I kind of wanted to combine that, and I think econ just seemed like a field where I could do that. And so the summer after my sophomore year, I started seriously considering studying econ in college. So I looked for opportunities to understand this field more. And I took a class at Brown University over the summer on behavioral economics, which is basically the intersection of psychology and econ. And so during my junior year, I just did more and more econ stuff, such as taking AP econ. Um, who my econ teacher, she also actually wrote my application, which was a good thing. And I also did like this econ competition at Harvard for high school students with a couple of my friends. And this all culminated in a research project last summer with Pioneer Academics. And it's a program that pairs you with a college professor, and the professor helps you write a research paper. And my paper was about the history of the Vietnam War through the lens of game theory, which is a study of, which is the area of strategy and decision making, and it's really closely related to econ. And through this project, I was able to demonstrate my interest in synthesizing the humanities and the STEM sides of social sciences together. Another large part of my activities at Sage was sports. And I think that sports is a really common activity, and it really isn't all that special or unique if you're not like a college level athlete. But for me, it was actually the thing that I spent the most time and energy in out of all my other activities. And so I ran cross country for 4 years and played soccer and ran track for 2. And I was varsity on all 3 sports. And I was also the captain of the cross country team. And I did have some other awards from playing sports that I was able to put on my application. But I was able to take my involvement in sports farther through the area of volunteering, where I taught kids with autism how to play tennis through a club that my friend started called Asing Autism. And also, I also taught autistic kids baseball through my service learning project that I was doing this past year. Um, yeah, and another thing with sports is that my counselor and my econ teacher who wrote my rec letters were also my cross country coaches. So that was like really good as well. The last component of my activities were my internships, and I did one during the summer of my before my junior year, and one the summer before this year. And the first was at a visual media company in China, where I just did some very basic translation work, as well as managing the company's social media platforms and also sharing my insights to the employees on how the people in the West view China, because this company was involved in selling photo stories on China's current affairs to Western media outlets. And the second internship I did was at a hotel near Disneyland, where I did a lot of price setting and accounting. And that internship kind of tied into my interest in econ, so that was good. So how did I portray myself in my application? So my Common App essay talked about the different perspectives that I gained from my multicultural background, since I've lived in 3 different countries. And when I was a kid, I went to an international school, and a lot of my childhood friends are from all over the world. And I talked about how my perspective was challenged when I came to Orange County, and I met kids, some of them who have never even been out of the US in their entire lives. And I also explored this idea of perspective by talking about my activities. And just to go on to the next slide and the next question, um, I think that's probably the best thing that I did on my application, just tying together my activities, because um, I was really puzzled as how I could bring all of them together, and I thought I did a really good job at that. What are some of the things that I thought I could have improved on? Definitely just doing more things, exploring more of my interests, particularly on the non-academic and more creative sides, because um, like as a kid, my first like dream job was to be an architect, and I was like really into drawing, and I didn't really develop that in high school, and so I wish I spent more time on that. As far as what I enjoyed most about high school, definitely just making friends and just doing stuff with them. And if I could do something differently, just again, just exploring my interests.
Thanks, Austin. Next, we have Hannah, who will be attending Dartmouth in the fall and studying biomedical engineering.
Hi everyone, my name's Hannah. Good afternoon. So I'm going to start with my activities. For my college application, I included like sports. It was like one of my main things. One of my main sports is table tennis. I've been playing table tennis for 10 years and did a lot of competitions. And every summer, my parents, like, I would like go back to China and train with the national team there for like 2 months. And it was a great experience, and I saw like a lot of new things and learned a lot of new things while I was there. And I also did cross country for all 4 years and was captain my senior year. And I did track and field for 2 years. And I discovered that I was really interested in research. So many of my things that I did was colon cancer research at Peking University. It was about like creating nanoparticle drugs that could like help combat like colon cancer in the humans. And we published that research paper. And while I like really liked research then, I did that my sophomore summer. And then so I also applied to more research programs. So there was one at the Stanford's Georgia Lab, which did multiple myeloma research for cancer drugs, and also took part of that. And it was really interesting. I discovered that I actually really liked research and just science. Because before coming into high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Like, I maybe wanted to do business or science. I don't know. I was the type of person that really liked to do everything. But then, like, into like Sage, I really was into science. AP Chem was one of my favorite classes, and math, which I like didn't really know because in middle school, math was one of my worst subjects. Okay, so community service. I did something called the Free to Breathe community. It was about like lung cancer and getting together like patients to create like these yoga programs where they can practice like how to let go and just make like lung cancer awareness more apparent in our community today. And another thing I did with Ashley over the summer was a summer art program at El Sol, and it was about sustainability in the environment and also teaching kids and craft and stuff, which is cool. And I also did other internships. I did one internship last summer at an urgent care clinic in Lake Forest and gained a lot of experience there because I'm on a pre-med track, and I really wanted to see what it was like working in a clinic community and just like knowing if I really want to do that in my future. I ended up really liking it. It was really interesting. Something I really like about the med program and like the medical world is that it really keeps you on your toes. Like one moment you're doing this and the next moment it's like someone comes in with this other problem, which every day is a different day and you always have a story to tell. I also did student council. I did student council for co-chair, I think, sophomore year, and I was secretary treasurer junior year. And what I recommend is that like everyone should definitely give it a try. I didn't think I was the type to do student council because I'm often like pretty quiet when you first get to know me, but then really like push yourself out there. And like giving speeches for student council elections were honestly like so scary to me. I would be like shaking before I talk, but now like once you get more practice in, and you'll get better. And if I look back on my experience, I would say we definitely enjoyed it a lot. And I'm so glad I did student council because I met a lot of good friends there too, like Jackie. Okay, so my application. I did early decision to Dartmouth. I only applied to one school, which was Dartmouth. And what they required was 2 essays and the Common App. So one of the essay was a why Dartmouth, and I just explained to them I like Dartmouth because of their close-knit community, and they have a really great science program there and great like alumni connections. And another one of my essays, I talked about like my love for science and the Common Application. And you can, for in your essays, you can really talk about anything as like mundane. I talked about like the orange grove by my house and how like it stimulated my like love for like investigation, the truth, and science. And I had an alumni interview from Dartmouth, and that took place in Panera in Newport Beach. It was really good. Like I asked them a lot of questions. He asked me some questions. And what I recommend doing is bring a resume to the interview so that they can always look back on like who you are, and like when they're typing up their like summary, they can see like what you did. Because alumni, like the alumni who like interview you, they don't really know anything about you. All they get is that you're going to Dartmouth, and or like not, you're applying to Dartmouth, and they don't know anything about your activities and what you look like. So like if giving them something as simple as like a resume will really help them like look back and remember some stuff. Okay, so next slide. Okay, the next slide is, what do you think you did well on your application? I thought my application for my essays, I thought I did like a pretty good job of like introducing who I am. I'm a person who's really curious, if you know me, and I really like, I also value the truth a lot. So I really portrayed that in my essay, and it's really simple, but it just like truly represents who I am, which is great because like colleges are taking that one glimpse at you through your essays. Okay, next question is, what do you wish you could have done differently during high school to better prepare for your application? Is practice writing. So my parents always like bought me those books, like 50 best essays that get you into like Stanford or something. And I would read them and read a lot of them. But one thing that I wish I would have done more instead of just reading them is practice writing my own. A good way you guys can do that is like creating reflections. So I would say like if you do something memorable, or like if you go to an internship, I would say like maybe like write a short little reflection about what you did, what happened, and what you've learned, so that during the like application process, it will also be easier for you to look back on it. Okay, what did you enjoy the most about high school? If you could restart high school, what would you do differently? I enjoyed so many memories in high school. Like most of them were just as a community. And high school, I would say, is one of like the best times of my life. Or I've only lived 18 years, but so far it's been the best. And because like you are here together as like a community, especially at Sage, it's so like small. Like when you go to like colleges, I don't know, it might be bigger, it might be same size, but like the connections you have with your friends are something that are so like priceless and amazing. And I would say like take more time to enjoy that more, and like don't like academics is very important obviously, but like sometimes like I would realize I would let myself like get so like so like frustrated and stressed over like school and like kind of ignore the other side of the high school experience. So definitely take advantage of that. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Hannah. Next, we have Annie, who's going to UC San Diego to study psychology.
Hi guys. So for my activities, what I did some academic clubs. Like since I was in Latin for all 4 years, I joined JCL, which is a junior classical league, and I applied for leadership as soon as I could. And they offer leadership opportunities, I think, even for freshmen, so you can be on the board even your freshman year. And with that, I helped plan Scram as a registration board member. Last year, we planned an entire regional event. And another one, academic club I joined was publication. Since I was really interested in photography, I applied as a photographer. I got in, and then I was a photography editor senior year. Even though I only did publication for like junior and senior year, it was still like a really meaningful experience getting to work on the yearbook and the school newspaper. Another thing I focused on was psychology and activism, which I also really just started junior year because that's when I figured kind of I was interested in psychology. So one thing I did is with the service learning, I could do an independent project. So I collaborated with one of my friends and we started an Asian American mental health project. And I also joined Bring Change to Mind, which is my senior year, a faculty-led project that focuses on mental health advocacy and all that stuff. The summer before senior year, I did a Brown summer program on identity, diversity, and leadership. And with that program, it allowed me to kind of learn more about social justice, where I polished more of my activism interests. And they also helped me come up with an action plan to improve the Asian American Mental Health Project. Kind of extending from that, I started another club called the Asian Alliance, where I used it to create a space for Asian students to talk about issues unique to the Asian American community, especially with like a social justice and activism focus. And another part of my application that was kind of big was photography, because I did quite a few competitions, and I also started a photography club throughout my sophomore through senior year. With the competitions, I think Jackie mentioned earlier, Mr. Parker would send out, his focus would be the writing portion of this competition, but it's the arts, scholastics, art and writing competition. I would do that. And I also did like OC Fair competitions. But yeah, those are some of the main activities that I focused on. As for my application theme, like I said before, it's kind of just activism and psychology with focus on mental health, but also social justice. So what I think I did well on my applications, I tried to be as genuine as I could with the essays and activities, reflecting my personal experiences and passion. Like most activities I did were I was interested in them and I was passionate and I wanted to do more of it, and not necessarily for a focus like, I have to do something just to say enhance my application, because I only started doing really, like, if you would say application related activities my junior year, simply because that's when I kind of figured out my passion. Before that, I had no idea what I liked or what I wanted to do. But just from that point on, I started to look for activities that could fit me, like the mental health stuff, and starting my own clubs to reflect my interest. Some things that I wish I could have improved on or I could have done differently to better prepare for the application, I would say, is to act on my ideas more. Before I started clubs, I would have like a lot of ideas for what I wanted to do for projects and clubs and things like that. I do kind of wish I started them earlier, because the only reason why I didn't was I was afraid or like it would be hard. But at Sage, like Ashley said before, it's really easy to start a club. You just get like a couple people, sign a form, give it to Campo, and you're pretty much all good to go. Like what a lot of the other people said, what I enjoyed the most about high school would definitely be spending time with my friends and my own personal growth, finding out what I liked, what I wanted to do, and who I wanted to be. But I do wish that I focused more on myself and my well-being, because high school, it's not necessarily an easy process. There's going to be ups and downs, and if you don't take care of yourself, it's not going to be fun. And I kind of wish I did that more, just so I could have a better time. And that's it.
Thanks, Annie. Next, we have Julia, who will be attending UPenn in the fall to study biochemistry.
Hi, so I'm Julia. So one of the activities that was really important in my application was research. Personally, since I'm going into biochem, like I've always kind of known that I was interested in like the scientific field, just because like as a kid I was always really drawn to like the museums, like the science exhibits in the museums. So I always kind of knew from like a younger age that I was kind of interested in something to do with science, and in particular stuff to do with like the human biology aspect. And so I really looked for a lot of research opportunities. I didn't go through any research programs. So after the summer of my sophomore year, I basically just emailed like 70 different professors and told them about like my interests. I sent them my resume, and I explained like why I was really interested in their research specifically. And so I did research with in a stem cell research lab, and I was studying genetic editing and cloning. And this was my first experience in a lab setting, and it was just so cool just to see how kind of like the research process worked, how the scientific method was carried out. And I got to work with a lot of different people all across different disciplines and like all different ages. I got to work with like the professor, postdocs, grad students, undergrads. And it was really cool just to see how everybody kind of worked together, and just to learn more about like what a lab setting was like. And then the summer after my junior year, I spent like a month at Brown studying skin sensitization from atopic dermatitis, which is eczema, and how it's linked to peanut allergies. And I really was interested in this research because I personally have a connection to it. Like I had really bad allergies as a kid, and I really talked about how this kind of really related to myself, and that's kind of what kind of I think got me in the door. And research was in general like a really just cool way to kind of get a more in-depth and better understanding of kind of what the scientific community is like, aside from just like learning about the subject itself. Another activity I really focused on was community service. Personally, I love volunteering. I love just being able to give back, and I just enjoy like even just the process of doing it. So I participated in Hoag Hospital's Junior Auxiliary Program, which is essentially a candy striper program. I started the beginning or the end of my sophomore year, and I applied. It's like an application, and I worked in the cancer center. And so it was just a really great way to kind of just be more like in a hospital setting, be around like the nurses, interact with patients one-on-one. I really got a lot of like really quality time just talking with different people, not only just as patients, but just as people, really talking to them about their own experiences. And I like was able to gain a lot of kind of skills from that. I also became the secretary of the program, just through like, and I was able to gain more like leadership experience in that sense. I also was a volunteer camp counselor for the Pacific Symphony Arts Express program, which is an arts program for middle school students, and it really gives them an opportunity to kind of explore their own identity within an art setting. And this also gave me a lot of different like skills like conflict resolution, because you know middle school students be having a lot of drama, and it was really just a great way to kind of get more involved. And I've been doing it for the past 3 years now. I'm going to be a counselor next week. And another activity that I participated in was tennis. I've been playing tennis for a while, and I was on the SAGE team for 4 years. And it was something that I was surprised how much I could talk about it, not only as like an opportunity to collaborate with others, but just in general, like as tennis as a sport, I was able to learn a lot about like staying calm and cool under pressure, learning to adapt, learning to interact closely with one person, really communicating effectively. And it was something I used on actually a lot of my applications, on a lot of my essays. So my story, for my personal statement, I personally talked about the loss of my pet and how it relates to my interest in becoming a physician in the future. I know that like some college counselors recommend against talking about that, but personally, I felt that it was a really integral part of my story, and I felt that I was able to incorporate it into talking about the ethical implications of scientific research and what kind of ethical problems that physicians have to face every day that I guess normally I wouldn't think about otherwise. So I kind of really tried to incorporate that in my personal statement. I also really talked about how I was very collaborative. A lot of my activities were always done working with other people, and I really strongly believe that a person cannot do anything alone, and they're always supported by others, and they're always collaborating with others. I also talked about being really service-minded, just because as I mentioned earlier, volunteering and community service is just so important to me, and especially if I am interested in going into the pre-med track, I think that being like really service-minded is so important. I also talked about interdisciplinary in my interdisciplinary nature. I discussed in a lot of my essays how I was planning on creating a custom curriculum where I wanted to not only study just like basic biology, chemistry, I wanted to study like, for example, health inequality in societies. I wanted to study psychology. I wanted to study like behavior. And I really just wanted to look at how many different disciplines intersect with each other. And I talked about like kind of creating a custom curriculum built around that concept. And finally, on my application story, I really discussed how my interests I've been pursuing them really consistently since an early age, and it's something that's kind of had a longevity to it. So what I think I did well, like a lot of the other panelists have talked about, I really think that authenticity is so crucial and so important. For me, the college application process was not only an opportunity to kind of think about like why I wanted to go, like where I wanted to go in the next year of my life, but it was also a really great way to just think about myself and kind of the journey I've been on and how I've grown as a person. And so I really tried to really hone in on like authenticity and being really genuine, because I think like that's the best way to present myself to other people. I think that what I had was a pretty cohesive story. I really tried to really show colleges what makes me tick personally, why I'm so interested in the things I'm interested in. And I really also focused on the multifaceted nature of like education. And I tried to really present many different key characteristics through different stories in my essays. I really, for what I could have done differently to prepare, I think I wish that I focused more on awards. I didn't really like know that that was like a thing until like I actually started the application. And so like, it was kind of weird for me to like try and figure out how to incorporate that into my application when I didn't really focus on it as much. I mean, it still worked out, but I think I still wish that I focused on it more earlier on. I also wish that I thought about my essays and my interests and how to tie them together much earlier, because I think that that was kind of a struggle, like trying to do it last minute. It's still definitely possible. It's just a more painful process that way. What I enjoyed most about high school, like all the other panelists have said, I really just love spending time with other people and creating really strong relationships and bonds. Throughout high school, I personally spent a ton of time focusing on academics and my extracurricular activities. And I think if I could restart high school, I would really just try to find a better balance between like all of those co-curricular things and also spending time with friends and really doing things that I really enjoy.
Thank you, Julia. I'll present my high school experience now. So I'll be going to Princeton to study civil and environmental engineering, primarily the environmental engineering component, although they go together as a major. So on my application, basically I focused on talking about myself as a rising engineer who will combine my passions for art and math to build creative designs to help solve environmental issues. So there are 3 components here that I focused on through my activities: art, math, and my desire to help solve environmental issues. So going into high school, I knew I had a very strong interest in STEM already, but I didn't know whether I was going to be studying math or engineering or computer science. So basically throughout high school, I explored a bunch of different STEM options. And what I have down here is actually really only what I focused on in my application. I did explore coding as well, but here I'll focus on math and engineering. So I took the AMC and the AMC 12. I got into AME, so I was able to put that as an award on my application. I also joined Math Club freshman year, and during junior year, I became co-president with Tim. And I also had a job as a math teacher's assistant at Irvine Math Academy for 2 summers. So I just got to know the teacher really well. And when he needed a TA, I volunteered. And yeah, I also did a few engineering activities. Over one summer, I took the Johns Hopkins University Summer Engineering Innovation Program. Basically, it was an introduction to a bunch of different engineering concepts. And it was actually through this program that I decided to focus on engineering in college. I had no clue what I wanted to do up until this point, honestly. I also did service learning 3D printed prosthetics. Tim already talked about this earlier, but basically we printed prosthetic hands and donated them to people in need. Art was something I didn't really get into until junior year of my high school. It was something I had always enjoyed doing as a hobby. However, I thought I would be studying STEM, so I never thought it would be worth my time to invest hours every week into doing art when it had nothing to do with what I wanted to study in the future. But junior year, I figured this was something I enjoyed and wanted to do. So I started taking classes outside of school. I made a commitment to spend 7 hours a week taking art class outside of school. And through that time, I was able to create enough works to complete a portfolio to submit. And I also entered some of these pieces into competitions, and I won an award, and I was able to put that on my application. And art was something I really enjoyed, and I'm really glad I made a decision my junior year to spend more time on it. And then I also joined, Sage has this club called Struck, and basically what we do is collect a bunch of art from students, and then we design a magazine based on this art and distribute it to the rest of the school to share the art. In terms of service activities, I did do a few that are not on here, such as tutoring. However, on my application, I focused on service activities that relate to environmental outreach because my major was environmental engineering. I know Tim talked about presenting yourself as well-rounded and able to do a bunch of different activities, but I took a sort of different approach and focused more on this one service component. So I did service learnings and environmental outreach. So basically we created environmental science curriculum for elementary school students. And surprisingly, there's not a lot of environmental science curriculum out there for younger students. And another service project I did was, Hannah talked about this earlier, but we founded a free after-school art program and summer camp, and we used recycled materials and discussed sustainability. And a big part of my service here was not only environmental outreach, but working with kids, and that was something I really loved and decided to write about because it meant a lot to me. So what do I think I did well on my application? I think I created a clear storyline and a very clear identity. So on the previous slide, I have my, like at the top, it says my application story. I actually wrote out this statement before I started my essays. And I made sure as I was writing my essays that all my essays fit this storyline because I wanted to present myself to the admissions officers in a very clear way so that they didn't have to look at my activities and try to draw their own conclusions. So basically, it took me quite a while to actually get to this point where I had a very clear storyline. But what I did was write down all of the traits and values that I really cared about and my activities and what they meant, the ones that meant the most to me. And I talked to my college counselor and my mom a lot about what everything meant to me and was able to eventually come up with this identity. What do I think I could have done differently during high school to better prepare for the application? Definitely spend less time on schoolwork and more time on extracurriculars. I wish I started my extracurriculars earlier. And like I mentioned earlier, I didn't start art until junior year, but actually after I started art, like focusing more on art, that's when I decided to start teaching kids art. And that was a big component of my application just because it was so much fun for me and I felt really passionate about it. So it came really easily to me when I had to write about it and create a narrative from it. Some of the other essay topics I had more difficult time writing about because I had, in a sense, sort of rushed my extracurriculars. I didn't start a lot of my extracurriculars until junior year. And by that time, I felt like I was pushing myself to do extracurriculars that I felt like I had to do for the sake of college rather than taking my time to really find ones that I wanted to do. So what did I enjoy the most about high school? And if I could restart high school, what would I do differently? I definitely enjoyed friendships the most. All my experiences with my friends are the ones that I'm going to remember the most. I spent a lot of my high school, more time than I wish, studying. I spent my lunches studying from freshman into a junior and senior year. I decided to stop doing that, and I thought that was a really great choice. I wish during high school I knew that social development was equally, if not more important than academic development. So, yeah. So if you have any questions, feel free to email any of us. Here are our emails. Our emails are also, they should be next to our names. Also, I just wanted to note that we all presented all of our activities and experiences, and I think for like underclassmen or even juniors, it can be really overwhelming to see everything. But remember that the application requires 10 activities and we're presenting everything all at once right now. So 10 activities may seem like a lot, but over the course of 3.5 years, 10 activities really comes down to perhaps 3 activities a year, which if you break it up and start early, it's not too much. And even if you're a junior and you feel like you don't have that many activities, it's really not too late to start. So now we'll go on to the Q&A section. We'll answer a few previously submitted questions and we'll take this probably until 4 p.m. And then after we end the section, we'll answer any live questions. So feel free to submit any questions you have in the chat box.
Oh, I'm back. Okay. So let's go to Q&A. First thing I want to let's talk about extracurricular activities. The first question is, what are available extracurricular activities at Sage? So there are around over, I think, 100 Sage Hill clubs, but then most of them are low-key non-functioning. So make sure you join active clubs. There's Struck, there's NHD, there's Poetry Club, Theater Club, Dance Club, Choir Club, Orchestra Club, Visual Arts Club, Robotics Club, and you can even start your own club. Now, there are these special clubs, leadership clubs that require applications. These include SAME, SLIC, Student Council, Honor Committee, and Student Ambassador. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of what they are. So SAME is Sage Hill Advocates for Multicultural Education. So Tim is actually a member of SAME. And basically what SAME is, it's students pushing for equality and diversity on campus. There's also SLIC. It's a student investment organization in which I think they use the students and they make decisions on whether, like, how they're going to invest, I think $150,000. And in order to get into SLIC, there's an entire application process. So make sure you know the teacher who runs SLIC and the current members. So if you know them, it would make your application a little easier and to get in. There's also Student Council. So Student Council is low-key a popularity contest, but you should still do it. I ran 3 times and lost each time, but then I just kept going and finally won once. I don't know if that was a pity win, but in any case, I won. There's also honor committee. So honor committee, basically, if you're cheating in the class or whatever, you get sent to honor committee. So it's a panel of students that decide basically your fate. So if you like to judge people, this is the organization for you. But you have to ultimately realize that you don't really have any power because MERS and Campbell ultimately make the final decision. So all you do is just make suggestions. Student ambassador. So this is, sometimes when you go on campus and you see like a bunch of like parents coming through and then the student explaining things, that's what you do as student ambassador. And if you really, I think the Chinese word is yo-show. If you want to be yo-show and show your parents that you're confident and able to do things, this is kind of what you want to do, become a student ambassador. So let's go to the second question. How do you get involved on and off campus? Tim, care to comment?
Yeah, for sure. So I think when it comes to clubs, commitment is the most important thing because most casual clubs don't have an application process. You just show up to a club meeting, and this means that lots of people are going to show up to 1 or 2 meetings and then leave and not do anything. However, the flip side of this is that if you do consistently show up to a club for 2-3 years, there is a very high chance that you will be leading the club in your senior year. For example, Ashley talked about how Ashley and I led math club, and this wasn't because we were the best at math or we were like the smartest or anything. It was that we would consistently show up to all the meetings and do all the contests. And by our junior year, the teacher thought that we were the most committed. So that's kind of why we got that position.
Okay, thank you for that comment, Tim. Ashley, do you have anything to add?
I just wanted to add, getting involved, usually you just have to reach out to people. A lot of people are willing to help. Teachers are always willing to help. So for me, when I wanted to start my art program to teach kids after school, all I had to do was send a few emails to elementary schools to see which ones wanted a free art program. And most of them said yes. And it really just took me like 10 minutes to write an email, and I was able to get this started. And Julia mentioned earlier, when it comes to volunteering and research opportunities, just sending a bunch of emails to people, a lot of times they won't respond, but if you send like 20 emails, you'll probably get a couple of responses.
Thank you for those comments, Ashley. So let's move on to the third question, which is, how do you balance academics and ECs, especially student athletes? Hannah, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, sure. A good method that I use was an agenda. You get an agenda freshman year at Sage, and ever since, like, I've been getting my own agendas every single year, and it's like a trip to the store, and you get to pick out your cute agenda for the year. And I would estimate like how long one activity will take, and then see like how packed my schedule will be for that day. And if it's like a hard day, I sometimes would stay in during lunch and do some of the homework or during car rides. But it's more about like how efficient you are with homework. Like if you're doing something else while like trying to do homework, it's always going to take longer. So what I realized is just like give yourself that 2 hour, 3 hour per day and just really like grind it out. And yeah, you'll be able to finish homework, no problem.
That is very, very good insight, Hannah. Ashley?
Yeah, I just wanted to add an important part of balance is finding activities that you really want to do. For me, my day was really stressful if I didn't have anything to look forward to at the end of the day. And for example, cross country and track and running usually helped me break up my day so I'd be less stressed. And also when I started doing art, that was something I could always look forward to at the end of every week, no matter what, like no matter how stressful my week was. And just having that significantly reduced my stress and sort of broke up the cycle a little. Also, I think a huge component of balance is sleep. And I know a lot of students don't get enough sleep. And personally, I've found that when I do get enough sleep, I'm able to be much more efficient throughout the day. Sometimes I think, oh, if I stay up 2 extra hours and get more work done, I'll be more effective. And however, the opposite was true. If I got less sleep, then I would take so much longer to get everything else done. I wouldn't really be able to focus in class. So I'd actually find myself spending like maybe 3 or 4 hours relearning material that the teacher taught me just because I was too sleepy in class to pay attention. So sleep is really important to balance.
That's facts. Sleep is very good. Okay, Julia, what do you have to add about this?
Yeah, like what Hannah mentioned earlier, like I think it's so important just to really make the most of every minute. Like if you're in a especially busy like season, like if you're a student athlete, like making the most of every minute, like on bus rides, you can like do your homework review or even sleep. Like it's just so important to just take advantage of every single like piece of time that you have. I also just think it's really important in general, just keep things in perspective. Like I personally would get so caught up in trying to do well on like my academics and like my extracurriculars. I would neglect like other really important aspects like health, like sleep, like Ashley mentioned. And I think it's so important just to sometimes just take a step back and really see things in perspective. Like don't push yourself too hard. This is just a period in your life. So really just kind of keep things in perspective.
Very good, Julia. Okay, now let us move on to Sage-related questions. So number one, what are the special things you did at Sage really like and enjoy? So for me, the things I did that I really enjoyed was student council. Student council enables you to organize a lot of school events, so that really helps you get involved in the school community. What's more than that, I really enjoyed X Block. So unlike other schools, Sage has this designated period where you can do your homework, you can talk to teachers, you can go home, or you can even participate in clubs. And basically, you just have this huge chunk of time to do what you want to do. And I think a really also interesting thing that Sage offers is Spring at Sage. So this occurs towards the around May or the end of May. And basically, what Spring at Sage is Sage hosts seminars on campus. This could be seminars about like building airplanes, stuff like that, or cooking with Flick, which I think isn't that good of an investment of time, but that's a different point. You can also travel. It could be domestic flights. It could be international travels. For me, I went to Scotland, and there I tried haggis, which is sheep stomach, which is really, really whack. I also had ramen on the roof. It was really strange. And I think, but despite the strangeness of Spring at Sage, it's really fun. I think the most memorable moment of Spring at Sage was when the president of the school, Gordon McNeil, broke into my room at the middle of the night because he thought that we weren't in the room. But then we were just so heavily in sleep that when he knocked, like no one opened up. So he kind of just broke into our room at the middle of the night and he just saw us sleeping on the bed. But yeah, that was something with Spring at Sage. And yes, so the second question, what opportunities at Sage should you really take advantage of? Annie, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, of course. I think one of the best opportunities at Sage is the smallness of the classes and as a result the closeness you can get to your teachers. So I would say really take advantage of conferences and X blocks too if you want to connect to your teachers. Sage teachers are typically really nice and they will answer any questions you have and offer any support in any way they can. So yeah, do that. Talk to your teachers, go to conference.
I also wanted to add that Sage offers, I know, I think Jackie already talked about service learning. Service learning, for people who do not know, is one full school day every month to work on a project of your choice. At least in junior and senior year, it's a project of your choice. And a lot of people sort of just take this day as a day off and to relax. But I think it's like, I mean, the school gives you a whole day to work on whatever you want to work on, and they have teachers and people there to support you. So I think one regret of mine is not taking advantage of this opportunity to start my own project.
Yes, indeed. Now let us go to the third question, which is, what have you learned at Sage, learned the most at Sage, and what is the biggest impact Sage has had on you? Hannah, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. So an important part of my Sage Hill experience is knowing to say yes to experiences. When something like a new opportunity comes, you may be like really scared to try it, or maybe like oftentimes I'm too like lazy, or I just be focusing on something else and not really be thinking about trying new things and saying yes to like new opportunities, new experiences. And when like someone offers you like, hey, you want to try this out, just like say yes and just go for it, and you'll definitely like learn something from that. And at Sage, I realized that like you how to like grow as an individual. Like it's a lot of learning, and you have to be able to make yourself humble and just really accept all these new material, kind of like a sponge, just absorbing all the water around you, and really knowing yourself and what you like, so that in college you can further like pursue that area. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Hannah, for that. Let us go on to the next person. Oh,
Yeah,
actually,
so the biggest impact that Sage has had on me is that I'm just gonna come clean. Like I'm a super, super lazy person. Like you will not catch me doing anything that I don't have to do. And I think that especially during my freshman and sophomore years, that made me really scared every time I had like a big test or like an essay that I had to write. Because partly because I was lazy and I didn't want to do it, but also because I felt like if I started on it, I'd realize like how bad I am at writing or like how little I knew about the subject. But I think through experience, what Sage has taught me is that taking the first step, whether that be just like writing the first paragraph or getting started on studying, that's always infinitely better than just putting things off, because that's the only way that you're ever going to get anywhere. So yeah.
thank you, Austin. So let's move on to the next page of Q&A. Okay, so parents. What is one thing students wish for parents to know? Let's have Annie start us off.
One thing that I think it's important for parents to know, especially during the admissions process, but also throughout high school, is try not to get over involved. It is the students' experiences ultimately, and students know what they want, or even if they don't, it's up to them to explore. And usually when parents get involved, that's when the anxiety and stress starts to like peak. So it's best just to let the students navigate their own ways.
Thank you, Annie. Tim?
Yeah, I think it's also important to recognize that elite colleges are definitely way overhyped, and fit is a lot more important than ranking. For example, admissions teams have gone on the record to say that rankings literally don't mean anything, and they're basically worthless, and that any school in like the top 50 or top 100 will give you an excellent comparable education. So with that being said, I think it's important to recognize that fit is a lot more fit is a lot more important than actually ranking, because rankings literally don't mean anything. Also, I think it's important to recognize that admissions at extremely selective colleges are extremely random, because each college has their own priority when making their class, and you really don't know what kind of a person they're looking for from your region in your year. So it's honestly more random than anything. And I just wouldn't stress too much about it, because there's a lot of it that you cannot control.
Yeah, totally agree. Hannah?
Okay. I'm really grateful for my parents, because what I like during this time, the parents didn't understand that like kids are under so much stress, and what parents at most they can do is just like being there to like maybe discuss ideas, brainstorm together. What my mom and I did, we would often at night go get boba, and it would be really peaceful and like little stress, and we like talk about college and like how's it going and stuff. But like always like, because you have to like realize that like kids are also like super stressed during time, but like also being there for them, like not like doing like totally hands off, but like maybe like once in a while like gently like reminding them like of like deadlines and stuff could be like really really good. And just being there for them and just talking ideas and maybe like giving them better ideas. And yeah, I think that's a good way to do it.
Indeed. Ashley?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, like, I think my mom, so basically, whenever she had questions about what I was up to with the college in terms of the college admissions process. She would talk directly to my college counselor. And I think this helped reduce a lot of my stress because I knew she was very worried for me as well. But instead of worrying and talking to me directly and making me more stressed, she would voice those concerns to my college counselors so that I didn't have to have that too much of that added extra pressure. So that was really helpful for me.
Yes. And Julia, any last comments?
Yeah, so I do totally get that some parents want to get involved, and I think that in certain cases, parents can definitely be super helpful. Just adding on to like what other panels have said, if like parents want to get involved, it's just really helpful. I think one of the biggest things parents can do is just help proofread some essays. If kids want like an extra pair of eyes to like look over their essays, maybe do some edits, I think that's a great way for parents to really support their kids also. But it's still so important to just realize that this is ultimately the kid's journey, it's their application, and they should have the full control and the final say of whatever they wish for their own application.
Yes, thank you for that, Julia. So let's move on to overall high school experience. The first question is, how many APs did you take, and do you think it's this important? Austin?
So personally, I took 11 APs. So that was 3 my sophomore year, none my freshman year. 5 my junior year, and 3 this year. And although I think APs are important for you to get to the baseline level of academic success that a lot of these so-called top colleges want to see, it's really not a place where you should feel like you need to differentiate yourself by taking like 18 APs. Because with each extra AP that you're taking, all you're saying is the same thing, which is that you're a smart and hardworking student. And yeah, so once you get to that like baseline level, you should definitely focus your efforts on activities and exploring your interests.
Thank you for that, Austin. So we actually had a question about how many APs each person took. So let's just go down the line. So Ashley, can you start?
So I took a total of 14 AP tests, 13 classes because AP Physics C is two separate tests. I took 4 sophomore year, 4 sophomore year, 4 junior year, 5 senior year.
Okay. Julia?
I took 13 AP classes. I think I took 3 sophomore year. I want to say 5 or 6 junior year and a couple senior year.
Tim?
I think I ended with 13 AP tests, 4 sophomore year, 5 junior year, and 4 senior year.
Hannah?
I took 13, 3 sophomore year, 5 junior year, and 5 senior year.
Annie?
I think I took 10. Yeah, I can't remember how many I took each year.
I took 13, 4 sophomore year, 5 junior year, and 4 senior year. Let's go to the second question, which is, what is the most memorable experience you've had in the past 4 years? So for me, some of the most memorable experiences came from planning pep rallies. So when you plan pep rallies, you're basically writing an entire skit, a performance for your entire grade to act in, which is really fun because you're able to direct where people be, and basically control a large group of people, around 100 of them. Also, I really enjoyed participating in Angel Hack's Accelerator program, which was this startup program that got me in contact with a lot of people from across Silicon Valley, brought me to Silicon Valley to pitch in front of investors. And it was overall just a really fun experience. Tim, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I think that for me, debate was my most memorable experience because although I did end up going to like a lot of the hackathons and pitched at Angel Hack with Jackie, I think that debate was more fundamental and that when you do debate, you kind of learn how to think and learn how to think critically and talk talk real like yeah, it basically helps you with a lot of life skills, and it kind of really affected my way of thinking and the way I approach high school in general.
Okay, thank you for that, Tim. Hannah?
My most memorable high school moments would be the highs and the lows. I would be like good time with friends was always great, and then also like the stressful times, and be able to look back and be like, wow, I wrote that long essay that I dreaded about, where I took those AP tests, and just like seeing those memories and knowing like how capable I am as an individual and like how far I've come as an individual, and like all the good memories also with friends is also really great.
Very lit, Hannah. Let us go to our final question, which is, can you give us any advice on how to plan for our 4 years in high school? Any good tips? Let's start off with Annie.
Yeah, so I would say this is going to look very different for everyone. And especially if you're incoming freshman or a sophomore, you shouldn't really have like a strict plan, because if you really want to plan, try to focus it on what you truly want from your high school experience, because high school experience is going to be unpredictable and things are not going to go according to your plan 100% of the time. And even when that happens, it's not the end of the world. And it's important to remember that there are always options, and a plan does not dictate your experience.
Oh, indeed. Ashley?
I wanted to add that I think summers are really important because it's 3 months to do whatever you want to do, basically. I'd say like take that time to explore your interests and try new things rather than just like spend the summer studying for SAT or even just taking summer school. I personally took summer school, and I wish like I took biology over the summer, and I think I honestly don't remember that summer that much. I remember the summers where I did new activities that were very different from what I would normally do during the school year. And I'd also say when it comes to planning high school, I wouldn't worry too much about like freshman and sophomore year. I'd instead focus on just getting super involved and trying new activities freshman, sophomore year, and not worrying too much if those are going to contribute to college or not, because a lot of activities are unexpected. Like you'll unexpectedly find activities that you love, and those are the ones often that you'll be able to write about the most on your college application.
Thank you for that answer, Ashley. So I just wanted to add the main thing for me, I would say, is just find a balance. Don't go to parties all the time. Don't study all the time. Don't play League of Legends all the time. Make sure you have a balance so you're able to do all things you enjoy as well as be prepared with other stuff. And make sure you want to find things that you really like. For me, a limit test would be if you're able to find something that you really enjoy doing and you can talk 5 minutes about it without stopping, then that is something you really enjoy. For management, I would say use like a planner, maybe Google Sheets, because it's free and online. And you want to make sure you start things whenever possible. You know, procrastination is kind of fun. You can do a lot of things, but like it's not worth it. Just do it when you can. And yeah, that would just be my tip. So let's go to the last section of the Q&A, which is college application experience tips, and this is mostly for juniors. The first question is, how was your college application experience? When to start, how to prepare? Let's start with Julia.
Yeah, so I think one really, really important thing to know is that essay writing really just takes time. It's really recommended to start in the summer, plan ahead, really give yourself so much time because you're gonna write like multiple drafts, different essays. I personally did not do this against the recommendations of literally everybody around me, and I really regretted it because it was so painful. It's definitely still possible. It's just you're gonna have to grind sometime or later, and sometimes I think it's better to space it out. Also know that sometimes you cannot rush the writing process. Sometimes things just like the essay writing, the ideas, they just flow. Like you gotta just let things run its course sometimes, and just like it can be painful, and just know that going into it, like you're gonna have to go through some tough times, but hopefully it'll all be worth it. Also, one thing to know is really get feedback. Many pairs of eyes is better than one. I would just recommend getting as much feedback as you can, even if you don't necessarily agree with like what people are saying. It's still better to like hear other people's opinions other than maybe just your own. Also know that not everybody will have the same opinion and not everybody will love or hate what you've written, because essays are all just so subjective, and it's going to be the same when college admissions officers read it as well. Also, do not be afraid to just completely scrap like essays and start over. I like can't tell you how many like different essay ideas like I was like, okay, I'm just literally gonna just start over just when I thought I was done with an essay question, because there's so many essays you have to write. Often those essays that you might want to scrap or you might want to like change a little bit, you can still use them, those same essays, or just like modify them a little bit differently for different questions. And so to that, I would recommend also saving every draft you write. Really create like an organized system, because it really comes in handy if you want to review essays for different questions.
Very well said, Julia. And I just wanted to add that perhaps also don't apply to too many colleges. Like maybe like just talk to your college counselors and see what like recommended amount you should apply to. Like applying to 31 or above 30 is sometimes a little too much from personal experience. So make sure you have a good amount so you can focus on them and really spend a lot of time on thinking about why you want to apply to these schools and the essays on those schools. And make sure to get differing perspectives on your essays, because even though you may have a perspective that you really want to do, it may be viewed differently by different people. So you want to just kind of get that feedback. And the last thing is things you think aren't important may be important. So make sure you just have those conversations with your college counselors and just show them like what you've done and make sure that you kind of understand which things you can really write about. So the second question is, did you use a counselor to help with your application process? Are they helpful, and how did they help you? Let's start off with Tim. Tim, you're muted.
Sorry, still muted. Okay, I actually had a lot of different counselors. I had one that was helpful and two that were not. So I guess my advice is that you should definitely choose your outside counselors carefully. Like it's perfectly okay to talk to multiple different counselors and just like have the meeting and think about like whether what the counselor wants for you aligns with what you want for you, what you want for yourself. I think also working with at most one counselor is important, because although like multiple sets of eyes can be great, a lot of times the different counselors conflict, and it makes it very difficult for you to actually write your essays when you have like two counselors telling you to take your essays in completely different directions. And I think it's important that your counselor understands you as a person and not just like and not just a set of like numbers and activities for the college. Because if they really understand you as a person, they'll be able to help you more. Your essays that you turn out with them will be more genuine, and you'll probably end up happier where you go.
Yes, thank you for that, Timothy. Julia?
Okay, yeah, so I kind of had a little different experience. I didn't use an outside counselor. I did have like a writer who kind of helped me like just look over my essays again, just like another set of eyes to look at my essays and helped me edit. I do think that your school counselors, the ones that Sage provides you, can be so helpful. I really strongly recommend utilizing this resource as much as you can. It's like part of your tuition, so really take advantage of it. I really think that that experience is what you make it. I went to my school counselor as much as I could, because also that school counselor, that college counselor is also going to write a recommendation letter for you. So I think it's so important just to like get to know them better, have them get to know you better, just so that they can even just write you a better recommendation letter. But also they have so much experience and so many different like experiences under their belt, especially in the college admissions realm. So they're a really, really great resource, I think, that you should really take advantage of.
That was a very lit answer, Julia. Let us move on to Ashley.
Yeah, I agree with Tim that like not all college counselors are super helpful. There are definitely some that are more helpful than others. I had to go through a couple before I found one that was that I worked well with. I wanted to add that working with a college counselor is really like the student has to be willing to put in the time and effort, and it's really what you make out of it. Like when I spent more time on my essays, then a college counselor was able to give me more feedback and help guide me more. But the times that I submitted like a super rough draft that I crammed in half an hour, I wasn't able to get as much help. And also, my college counselor wasn't as willing to spend as much time helping me because she knew that perhaps I hadn't put in that much effort. So really, it's about when it comes to college counseling, I think it's what the student chooses to make out of it.
Well said. Let us move on to the third question. What are the main things you think helped you get into college? Starting off, Julia.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that helped me was really telling a really clear and cohesive story. I think it's so important to just really connect the dots for admissions officers, because you have to know that like all they see when they get your application other than your essays is just like a list of stuff you've done. And it's so important to give them like a background and like why you're motivated to do things, like why you've participated in this activity over this activity. I also think it's really important to present yourself as really well-rounded. I'm not really an angular candidate. I tended to present as well-rounded, so I really tried to play up that and talk about the different skill sets that I have that are really different and that I think will benefit me in a college community in very different ways.
Yes, very good. We will move on to the next person.
Yeah, I think also when you're applying to college, I think like declaring your major or the major that you put on your application is also really important because like once you get into college, right, like that the major you put on your application has like no effect whatsoever. You can declare into whatever major you want, and what you put on your application is just for the college admissions process. And well, now that being said, I think it's important to be strategic with that major placement. For example, as we mentioned before, if you put something like computer science, your odds of admissions go from 13% down to 1%. So I think like being careful about that is really important.
Thank you for that, Tim. So let's go to our fourth question, which is, what do you think you wish you knew before you started the application process? Starting off, Ashley.
I wish I knew how much writing there was. Writing is something I struggle with. So I wish I started earlier. I did start during late summer and but a lot of the writing process extended into the fall, and during senior year with all of my classes and everything, it took so much energy and effort to go to school and then have to do my homework and study for my test and then write these essays. It was just, I think definitely first semester senior year, I felt super stressed. It was the most stressful semester of my high school experience. So I wish I started earlier with college applications and got at least a good majority of it done before senior year even started.
Yes, thank you for that insight. Hannah?
One thing I learned is that I over exaggerated the college application process. It's honestly just like essays, and it's a lot similar to the English portfolio essays that you write every year and reflecting on what you did that year. And a good way to like write an essay is just to like almost like a creative assignment, making sure it's like unique and different and it stands out, not just like some essay that like the people probably will read a lot of. I want to make it different. One of my essays, I talk about like Tai Chi and its like relationship with like cancer research and like table tennis. It was just like really different, and like finding those topics like that and writing the essays and starting them is going to take like a while. But if you actually sit down, and what I did was I would often like change the places I go to. Maybe like I usually would do homework in my room. I would like go to a nearby park and just focus. And usually I would come back with like the main idea or a rough draft written out. And doing these like solely focusing like a bit of a time, like you'll like definitely get it eventually. And I feel like most of the time is used on like editing, because like your ideas come up really quickly, but then it's just like how much editing you put and time you put into like revising and making your ideas clear. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. Let's go to big boy Austin now.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people think of the college application process as some type of huge and scary test. Like, People think that there's a certain amount of APs that you have to take, or a certain number of hours of community service that you have to do, or a certain score that you have to get on your SAT. And although those are important, um, I think just mystifying the process and thinking of it as scarier than it actually is very detrimental and just not true in general. My advice would to be to think of yourself as an equal in this transaction with the college. Like, don't act as if you're begging the college admissions officers to like let you in. You should think of it as, what can I offer to this college? What can this college offer for me?
Yes, thank you, Austin. So actually, we're a little bit over time, but that's okay. We're just gonna go to the live Q&A section after finishing these questions. So let's move on to question 5. And I think someone asked this in the chat, so all of us are gonna answer this one, which is, how did you choose which school you committed to, and how long did it take you? So let's start off with Timothy.
Yeah, so I think for me, money played a large part in that decision because with the Regent Scholarship, UC Berkeley became significantly less expensive than a comparable like four-year private university. So it got to the point where I was, saving I was going to be saving 50K a year by going to Berkeley, and like the education at Berkeley is like pretty comparable to other like top tier institutions. So I think for me, the choice was pretty clear.
Thank you, Tim. Let's go to Austin.
Yeah, so for me, originally, when I looked at Columbia, I just sort of saw a very prestigious school in a very good location. And I think that's what a lot of people see in many of the top schools. And I would just say to, um, if your reasons of liking a school are that it has a great education or some vague or general description that can be applied to like many different schools, then you probably want to do more research and find like specific programs that you are really interested in, and yeah, just really look at the reasons as to why you like a certain college.
Okay. All right. Ashley.
So how I chose the college that I committed to, well, honestly, so I applied Princeton early, and so I didn't actually apply to that many schools after Princeton. But the ones I did, I applied to 3 other schools besides Princeton after I was admitted, and I didn't get into any of those schools. So the choice was pretty straightforward for me.
Julia.
Yeah, so I chose Penn really because of the interdisciplinary nature and how they really focused on like trying to combine like an intersection of disciplines, and that was something I really appreciated about the school.
Hannah.
I discovered Dartmouth through the college representatives that come to Sage. And when college rep came to Sage, actually I went to that rep thing with Austin, and I like learned more about Dartmouth. And Dartmouth is a lot like Sage. It's like small, like close knit. It's bigger than Sage, but like there's a lot of like good connections, alumni connections. And what I also really liked is that it offers like a program junior year where you can go directly into med school, which I am on a pre-med track, so like that really interested me.
Thank you for that. Annie.
I chose UCSD kind of similar to Tim because honestly it was because of COVID-19 and the economy. It was just a safer choice for me, even though I kind of wanted a completely different type of school. I really wanted to go to a small liberal arts on the East Coast, but because of the current situation, I did choose UCSD. But I'm still happy with that choice. So.
Thank you. For me, it was pretty much like where the best boba places were. So in Georgia, I kind of was like, okay, maybe there would not be a lot of boba places, but in California, that's where they are. So let's move on to question number 6. how did you choose which colleges to apply to? Which is kind of similar to the last question, but Annie?
Um, for me, I think what's really important is to recognize what you want in a college, like setting, size, culture, the community. And you can do this by going on their websites, contacting the current students or alumni, and also doing either virtual visits or in-person tours. But I would add that don't let these things restrict your choice, and stay open-minded, because you never know what's going to happen. Like for me, again, I really, really wanted to go to a small liberal arts, but did change last minute because of to go to UCSD. I'm still perfectly happy where I am.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Julia?
Yeah, I would just recommend like what Annie mentioned, like doing a lot of research. That's so important because honestly, like you're gonna get probably a great education wherever you go. So you should really look into like really specific details that attract you to a specific school. I recommend if for this is probably more applicable to freshmen and sophomores, because I know juniors with the pandemic it's kind of more difficult. But I recommend going to info sessions and tours, because a lot of the times the vibe that you get even when you just step foot on campus can really tell you a lot about how you'll feel about the school. I also really recommend taking a lot of notes when you're going on these info sessions and tours to look back on, because sometimes like if you're going in a lot of different tours, you'll forget like what exactly like the little details, but those come in handy when you're trying to write like the wide college essays later. So yeah, just really take a lot of notes and make sure to really, I think, take advantage of that time.
That was very good, Julia. Let us move on to question number 7, which is, what should you do if you are waitlisted? For me, I got waitlisted to 1/3 of the schools I applied to, which was 9 waitlists, which was a lot. So basically what I did was, so when you're waitlisted, you're able to write something called a letter of continued interest. Basically what that is you kind of just write in why you want to go to that school still so badly, and also how you can contribute to that school, and pretty much any updates that has occurred since you applied, which is usually in January or November if it's in UC school. So yeah, pretty much you just write those things, you send it to your local admissions officer and also a portal if they have that. And yeah, you should be good to go. Annie, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I agree with what Jackie said. Just do what you can, do everything that Jackie mentioned. And also remember that college doesn't define you. And as Julia said earlier, you can get a good education and experience anywhere. So don't, after you do what you can with the wait list, just move on and look at other options.
Yes. Okay, let us move on to the last question is, how do you manage stress and anxiety about college admissions? Let's start off with Timothy.
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me in kind of like managing stress and anxiety was ignoring a lot of the negativity that surrounds college admissions. I know there's a lot of hype about how, Stanford's acceptance rate has now dropped below 4%. And if you just look at the numbers, obviously it does seem like very daunting, but it's also important to recognize that you are not the average applicant, and your odds are probably going to be a lot harder than that. And the odds that you, for example, get denied to every single college are very, 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 very small. So I think just keeping that in mind, and that like at the end of this process, like you will have a college that you will like and where you will get a good education at. I think that is important.
Thank you, Tim. Annie?
Yeah, the college process, it is an exhausting process and can easily drain you mentally and physically. It is pretty scary when you first face it, but remember that the college, their name, and their rank doesn't define your worth. This process is not a contest about whose identity or story is better or more worthy. Your experiences and what you do as a person makes you who you are, and it's about what you do in your community. And your experiences could be very different from your peers, so it's also important to try not to compare yourself to others around you, and don't stress about what other people see as a quote-unquote good college, because a good college is really one where you fit the best.
Thank you for that answer. Ashley?
Well, this is more for rising seniors, but I personally experienced a ton of stress during the college application process. like from the writing component of it, writing really stressed me out. I would go like on my computer and not really, like my mind would just freeze. And I think a big component of this was I would read example essays that were completed and perfect, and then I would compare like my rough drafts to the example essay, and I think that just increased my stress because I was comparing something that was like a very rough version to a highly polished version that someone had already spent hours and hours on. So I'd recommend during the process, don't compare yourself to other students or example essays or example applications. Just focus on what you're doing, and remember that when you are starting the process, your essays are supposed to be rough. Your first draft is supposed to be a bad draft. So don't try not to compare yourself and stress too much if at the beginning of the process you don't feel like you're getting the progress that you want. Just be patient with yourself.
Yes, thank you for that, Ashley. Let's go to our last person, Miss Hannah.
So I would say breathe. Everything's gonna be okay. And a good thing to do is being able to turn that like frustration and stress into action and motivation to like actually go work for it instead of just like sitting around and just like feeling stressed and frustrated. I think you guys should like just like go for it. Just dive right in, give writing an essay a try, and just see how that works. Using calendars are really important. Like buying a big calendar to see like all the deadlines is also great. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. So now it's time for live Q&A. If you guys have any questions, just write it in the chat. We'll try to answer some questions that have already been asked. I think Ashley's going to pull that up at the moment. But if you guys have any other questions, please write it in the chat box below.
So we said we were going to end this at 4:30, and we'll keep that ending time. We'll try to go through as many questions as possible in that time. If we are not able to get to your questions, you feel free to email us. Again, our emails are next to our names right under the video.
So yes, the first question is, how did you all come up with your essay topics? How do you recommend approaching the essay writing process? So anyone can just jump in right now.
I guess I'll answer this question because I did struggle a lot with this process. I found that the easiest way for me to come up with essay topics was talking out loud, whether it was talking to my mom. My mom was really supportive in this process and willing to discuss questions with me, or talking to my counselor, or even just like saying things out loud to myself. It helped me get over that initial hurdle of figuring out the topic.
Yeah, I also had a pretty hard time coming up with my essay topics because, to be honest, I didn't have that many meaningful, or like quote unquote meaningful activities to focus on. But similar to what Ashley said, when I would talk it out with someone, especially my friends, maybe just texting them with ideas, they could help me even think of ideas that helped. And also like kind of listing out everything that you have, your activities, your interests, and your passions can help, and see if there's a common theme or like anything that can relate to the prompts that can also help with this process.
I think for me, free writing was very useful. This is where you just open a document and just start brain dumping your ideas, and you don't care about grammar or spelling or basically making it coherent. Like the whole point of this is to just free up your mind and just dump all your ideas out on the table so that you can have an easier time of choosing from them later.
All right, let's move on to the next question. Would you recommend Sage Hill over a large public high school in Irvine? If so, why? And what is unique about Sage that stands out over others? If you could choose between Sage and Uni or other public schools, would you still choose Sage?
I think this really depends on what you are looking for in your experience. There's no really definitive answer of like if Sage is better than a large public school or anything like that. For me, I chose Sage because I did go to a public middle school, and I wish I had gotten maybe like a little bit more support from the faculty and administration. And Sage, it's because it's a smaller size, it's easier to connect with the teachers and the staff. And the teachers do pay attention to you as an individual and will provide you help. And that's kind of why I chose Sage instead of a public school.
So for me, I think the best way to summarize how I've used Sage in terms of other schools is this one AP government trip I went on. So basically, it was this trip. There were students from all different high schools, and we were meeting for the seminar. And basically, whenever the instructor of the seminar, whoever was running it, asked a question, the first person to raise their hand would be someone from Sage Hill, not someone from uni, not someone from other schools. It would always be someone from Sage Hill. I think for that, and what that says to me is that Sage Hill really fosters like one of the defining things that Sage does is make individuals, like make people who can lead and speak for themselves. And so yeah, I think for that reason is why I think Sage Hill stands out above other schools. Does anyone have anything else?
Yeah, I wanted to add, I did feel like at Sage, I was able to get closer to my teachers than I would have at a public school just because the class sizes are smaller. But I think one component or one part I wanted to mention is that I heard from some friends at public schools that getting recommendation letters from teachers is it's a more difficult process. Not everyone can get a letter from the teacher they want, but at Sage, for the most part, if you contact the teacher about getting a recommendation letter, they're more willing just because they have less students to write a recommendation letter for.
Okay, let's move on to the third question. A read so busy schedule, academics for sure, and then every of you got so much to do, including activities, clubs. How can you manage so well? I mean, you have done everything so well. As a freshman, I am getting so nervous. Do you have any suggestions how to settle well for freshmen? Does anyone want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I would say, like I've mentioned before, honestly, freshman, sophomore year, don't worry too much about college and applications. Do focus on your own high school experience and exploring your own interests. It really should not feel like a burden or a list, and you definitely don't need to be doing activities or a certain number of them just so you have something to put down in your application slot. So try to do things that you like and want to do. Like, for example, the only like main activities that I really did was either photography or Asian American activism or mental health related, because these were things that I personally was interested in. And it's really easier said than done, but you don't want to be stressing so much about the application process and everything that we've talked about, because it could take away from your high school experience. The experience is not about the application. It's not about college. It's about you and your growth and your experience.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely second everything that Annie said. I think it's also important though to explore different things that you might potentially be interested in. Like freshman and sophomore year should be primarily exploratory in nature, and I feel like just by having that mindset will kind of reduce the stress a little bit. It's because you're not in the mindset of, well, I have to do this or I have to do that to set up this story or whatever. It's more just like, okay, I'll try this and I'll see if I enjoy it or not.
All right, let's move on to the fourth question, which is, did you fill out all 10 activities? If you have more than 10, would you consider listing less if some are less meaningful? Does anyone want to talk about this one?
I mean,
Go ahead.
oh, okay. So I personally did fill out all 10 activities, but it's certainly okay if you have less than 10, because colleges know that it's very difficult to commit fully to 10 activities. If you do have more than 10 activities, you can also write about it in the additional information section or your essays.
I wanted to add, for the most part, at least talking to my college counselor, they highly recommended that I fill out.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's move on to the next question, which is for STEM, specifically for CS major, how many APs do you think is basic? Which are most important? Austin mentioned there's no need to take many APs, just basic. So I asked how many are basic set. So for me, I applied as CS and I had 13 APs. I think the most basic APs you need to take for a CS, like I feel like AP Spanish would not be entirely necessary for CS, but what you need to take is definitely a calculus AP, like a few science APs. So things just related to CS, and those are the most important. And regarding basic and what's the recommended number, I would just say talk to your college counselor about that. I think the average on Sage after the 4 years is 8, but it really depends which school you're aiming for, what major you're aiming for. So just make sure you talk to your college counselor about that one. Anyone else?
I would say that's like similar for other majors too. I did biomedical engineering, and my college counselor recommended I take AP Bio and a lot of the science classes. So yeah, take APs that are related to your class, but also like do other areas too. Like I also took AP Spanish and AP Histories just to show that I'm like well-rounded, that I can do not only science but also like humanities and other stuff.
Okay, let's go to question 6, which is, do you think there will be research opportunities this summer because of COVID-19? I'm actually involved in an organization called Coronavirus Visualization Team, which is a Harvard run undergraduate organization. So they actually have a bunch of opportunities, whether you're a designer, you're a writer, or you're a programmer. So basically, if you want a job or something to do with research, you can definitely just reach out to them. They have a lot of spots available. If you just look online, I think a lot of different companies are hiring like high school students, especially during this time, for like unpaid internships or even paid internships. So kind of just look online, and I think you will find a lot of things. Does anyone else want to say anything about this one?
Yeah, for me, the program that I did was all online, and I think a lot of the research programs for high school students are like it's done through Zoom, so I think it should be okay, even though there's coronavirus.
So the number or question number 7 is, what is your average sleep time? Does anyone care to comment?
My average sleep time is 7 to 8 hours. I really value my sleep time, beauty sleep, because like when I don't get enough sleep, I would often fall asleep during class, which would be really bad. So getting a lot of sleep is really important. I usually set a bedtime at like 10:30. 10:30, I would go to sleep, and I would usually try to finish all my homework before that. If I didn't, I would probably do it the next day. But 10:30, like I would be in bed.
To add that, so during during sophomore year, I got an average of like 6 hours of sleep. And it was definitely a huge struggle during sophomore year, and it wasn't due to the workload. I think it was due to poor time management. And during junior year, I made sleep a priority because it had made sophomore year such a struggle for me. And after I made it a priority in junior year, I was able to get 8 hours of sleep pretty consistently, even though my workload did increase junior year. So I think it was just about prioritization.
Yeah, I got like, I think 6 to 7 average. It was kind of bad. It was throughout, like, I wish I got more, and like Ashley said, prioritize sleep more because it is really important. Every time, like, if I would not get enough sleep every day, it would just be so, like, I would be sleep deprived like 3 days a week, and it was not good. But senior year is when I finally was able to really prioritize this, and sometimes I had to take sacrifices and like maybe not put that much effort into an assignment and for the sake of getting more rest. And that was what made it a lot easier and my experience more enjoyable.
For me, I think I totally could have got like 8 to 10 hours of sleep, but sometimes there would be like a Supergirl episode, and I would be like, oh, this is more important at the moment. So yeah, I think if you time manage well, you should be able to get a lot more sleep. Let's move on to, oh, does anyone else want to talk about this, or should we move on?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I feel like sleep really depends on the person. Some people are okay with operating on like 5 hours of sleep. Some people need 8 or 9 to remain functional. I think, well, for me personally, I try to get 7 hours of sleep, but I could operate on like 6 or 5 for a couple of days if it was like really, really necessary. But I think I think when it comes to like quote unquote advice, I think it's important to find like your tolerance.
Thank you for that, Tim. Let's go on to question 8. So if someone were to go to what the public thinks of as a bad college and still gets good grades and work hard, can they still get into a good college? Yeah, I totally, because I think what colleges look at is what resources like colleges, they see what school you're coming from and they know what resources you have. Say your school doesn't have a lot of APs and you take every AP they have to offer, they know that you've been working really hard. But if your college has like, or your school has like a bunch of APs and you're only taking like a few of them, they're saying that you're not challenging yourself. So basically, colleges look at how well you're challenging yourself in comparison to what resources your school offers. Anyone else?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Jackie said, but also, like I've said a couple times already, the definition of a good college, it's really arbitrary, and it depends on how you're defining that. It doesn't necessarily just have to be name and rank. It could be fit or yeah. So yeah, you can definitely still get into a quote unquote good college no matter where you go for high school.
Okay, let's go to question 9. How has Sage shaped your idea of who you are and what the purpose / meaning of your life is?
Deep question.
This is very deep. I don't think many of us know exactly what the meaning of our life is, but I think what Sage allows you to do is it gives you a lot of opportunities and space to just allow yourself to figure out what you want to do. So at some schools, what they might do is just like have you like focus specifically, like I know, okay, I don't want to stereotypicalize, but at some schools like Troy, they do a lot of academics, so all you do all day is just academics. But at Sage, they kind of give you a little bit more wiggle room to do what you want to do, and because of that, you're able to explore more of what else you like to do besides just academics.
A part that I want to share with is my mom always tells me like filling yourself with love and loving your community. Our high school is about like learning how to like give your time and give things to your community. And I thought like at Sage Hill, I learned just that, like how to give your time. Oh, I'm so sorry, that's my dad. And yeah, and just learning like to take in things and growing as an individual and improve every day little bit by little. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Hannah. Let's go to our 10th question. Would you recommend taking AP Calculus, AB, or BC? I think this question really depends on who you are, what grade you're in, and like what the purpose is. So I don't know, if you want to challenge yourself, I would say BC. But if you want to do other things, maybe it would be easier to take AB. Does anyone else have any comments about this one?
Yeah, I agree with Jackie. I think if you're someone who's really interested in STEM, especially math or engineering, definitely I'd say take BC over AB.
Yeah, I think also it's important to recognize that at Sage, after you take AB or BC, you will most likely be taking multivariable calculus, which covers like the C part of calculus BC. So what a lot of kids do is that they take AB and then they take multivariable calculus and take the BC test that year as well.
Yes, so I think that is pretty much all of our Q&A questions. I think we have time to answer one more if anyone wants to put anything in. Actually, someone's asking about the Zoom recording.
Oh yeah, we will share the video afterwards.
Yeah, I think we're gonna put it on YouTube. But yes, so basically, that kind of concludes our thing. And if you guys have any other questions, just make sure to email us. Once again, our emails are, if you go on Zoom, you can see our emails right next to our names. And yeah.
All right, thank you so much for attending our webinar.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for every.
Yes.
Okay, I will end this meeting now.